Welcome to Beyond the Work, Tales in Multifamily Maintenance, an audio and video podcast brought to you and powered by the Multifamily Media Network. My name is Chris Caramanica, and I am your host. As a 15-year veteran of the apartment industry, I feel like I have done and seen it all. Don't we all feel that way? And then we see or hear something else. I have stories to tell, and the desire to hear and tell others' stories. As a multiple committee member with NAA, a CAMT advisory board member, and a national presenter and educator, I have met and worked with so many people in our great industry at all levels. This is not a how-to podcast. It is a how-did podcast. We are going to explore the how-did tales in multifamily. How did we do it? How did we learn from it? How did we grow? How did we decide not to do it again? Join me as we go beyond the work. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Work, Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. My name is Chris Caramanica, and I'm your host. I am very excited for our guest today. Khalil Muhammad was referred to me by a friend at the National Apartment Association because Khalil was in the 20s on the Rise program last year with NAA. And I just had the pleasure of meeting him, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about Khalil and learning a little bit more about Khalil today. So Khalil, welcome to Beyond the Work.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate you for having me on your show. I'm very honored, and I love to share my story. Yeah, so let's rock it, man.
So Khalil, let's start with where in the world are you? Where are you based? Where are you from?
So right now I'm in Detroit metro area. One of our properties is located in Farmington Hills. I am a project manager over our capital improvements with Elevate Commercial. And, I oversee all of our, new homes that are coming in and being set, any street reconstruction, um, light post and, tree removals, large remodels, things in that.
That's great. So, Michigan, Detroit, I'll be honest, I've never been. Um,
Oh man,
but
you
I
missing
know
out.
that, well, listen, I'm going to have to come visit now. But
Sure.
how did you get into multifamily? I know you and I were talking, you're a young guy. But tell me a little bit how you got into the industry.
Well, I've been doing actually, let's rewind a little bit. I've had a job since I was about 12, 13.
Okay.
One of my friends, his dad had a janitorial business. And I started doing janitorial, whenever I was not in school. And then my dad, he started out with his own heating and cooling business in Chicago. And I was with him when he first launched his business. And I would work with him outside of school as well. And then my boxing coach, um, he had a remodeling business, and he did commercial remodeling, where he remodeled colleges and stadiums and et cetera. So that's why I learned how to do my painting and drywall work and et cetera. So was I interested in doing any of that as a career? I'm gonna be honest with you, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It wasn't until I was trying to find a job. I'm like, man, I can't find anything anywhere. And I relocated to Louisiana, and I was going to join the union down there. It was like, hey, you can come join a union, and we'll get you a job with Johnson Controls and this, that, and the other, and all of that. And I went down there, and it did not happen in that way. It didn't happen in that way at all. And I was still looking for a job. I was going to their classes, but I was still looking for a job. And I stumbled across a maintenance technician job, and I was reading the description. And I'm like, okay, all right, I can do this. This is like working with my dad. This is no issues. And you know, I applied. You know, and actually, this is before I really got to know how to do a resume for real. And I applied with a essay long letter to the to the manager, and she accepted me. And when I got on the job, the maintenance supervisor, he saw that I was young. He was like, "Listen, I'm gonna train you up." And he was like, "I'm gonna, let's give it 6 months. In 6 months, I will have you ready to take your EPA exam." And so I took my EPA exam on a first go. I got a universal um, EPA certification. I actually, for all of our techs out there, you probably know you could take it at Johnstone's. So I took
Yeah.
I took my test at Johnstone Supply. It took me about 3 hours, and yeah, I was going ever since then. Just
All
kind of
right, so let's
rocking.
back up. You have an
Yeah,
interesting story, right? You didn't
yeah,
start
yeah,
where I hear a lot of people is that like I fell into this business, right? I think of
yeah,
you, I think I'm listening to your story, thinking of you a little bit differently. You were surrounded by the trades, right?
yeah.
You were doing it from being in a teenager as a cleaner. You had coaches and mentors and family members in your life that were in the trades.
Hmm.
What you said that really resonated with me is like I didn't want to do any of that.
No, I
What
was wanted to go to school for international
let's
business.
but let's start there because I think it's really important, right? Is that
Yeah.
like you were surrounded by all this and you had been doing the work.
Hmm.
And I think when you were thinking about schooling, why didn't you want to go into the business? Because I think a lot of young people today, and I know, you said you told me a little bit earlier you're in your early 30s, but people getting out of school now have a very similar mindset. So I think it's very interesting. Why did you not want to work for your dad or as a plumber or work in remodeling like your boxing coach? What was your why? Can you put that into words?
So yeah, yeah. So initially, um, so the way I looked at HVAC back then, I was like, man, this is too tedious. That's exactly what I told
Mhm.
my dad. I'm like, this is too tedious. This is
Interesting.
a bit much. And he was like, he used to always stress, like, listen, if you get a trade, you will always have a job. You will
Yeah.
always have a job if you get a trade, no matter if you take heating and cooling and plumbing or, painting, no matter what, but you will always have a job if you take on a trade. And me being, 16, 17, 18 years old, I didn't really look at it like that. I'm like, no, I wanna go overseas, or, I wanna be this big corporate exec, in a business, and, all of that. And even with drywall and painting, even to this day, I hate painting with a passion. I think every maintenance tech hates painting. I'm be honest with
I
you.
I hate painting. Not every maintenance tech. I know some great professional painters. It
Yeah,
is very relaxing. It is very calming. Um,
yeah,
but I can, it took me a while. I painted this and I hated every stroke of the brush, every
yeah,
pass of the roller, when I
yeah,
when I repainted this office. But that's
yeah.
interesting. So you wanted to go into you envisioned a life for yourself coming out of school,
Mhm,
being in international business, wearing a suit and tie. I'm
mhm.
imagining, right? I'm imagining your imagination is and you're nodding, so feeling
Yep.
like this is, you know, was it about for you, was it about money? Was it about prestige? Was it about no longer working with your hands because you had done that since you were in your teens? What was it? Because a lot of people experience this.
Yeah, it was a few things. It was because of money. I'm like, man, I don't see HVAC guys really, really getting a lot of money like that, or plumbers really getting a lot of money like that. And I want to get a lot of money, and I want to take my family to the next level. I want to
Okay.
take my community to the next level. I want to take everybody around me to the next level. You know, so that's what it was for me. Not necessarily that, I didn't want to work with my hands. It's just, I just wanted to have a big impact on what I do and be able to provide for my family.
Hmm.
That was the really biggest thing.
No, and I think that's great. And your story resonates with a lot of people, whether they're new to the industry or they've been in the industry a long time. And I
Mhm.
think that again, it's why I wanted to have maintenance professionals like yourself on my show to
Yeah,
begin with. It's why I did it, because I think
yeah.
that no matter where you are in the industry, you can learn a little something. And what I've learned in my 16 years in multifamily, 25 years in business is that you can be the trades are fantastic and they are a point of y- work and pride and success. I've worked with some of the smartest, most intelligent people that could go toe to toe in a boardroom, but
Mhm.
they're HVAC technicians or
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
master
Yeah.
plumbers, right?
Yeah.
Um, so you go to Louisiana, doesn't work
Mhm.
out, wasn't what you wanted it to be, didn't turn out what you want to do. So then you go back to Chicago, do you go to Michigan? What happens after, you got into the
Great question.
biz, if you will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, so great question. So, um, I was down in Louisiana, Baton Rouge to be exact. I was down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I was, around the LSU area doing maintenance. I started out doing low income housing and
Huh.
or affordable housing, I should say. And then I gravitated over to high end luxury housing, you know. And so from there I'm like, I want to try something different, and also I want to be closer back to home to where my
Mhm.
family was at. But I'm like, I don't see myself moving, back to Chicago, to expensive Chicago. And but I do want to be closer to family. So I ended up relocating to Detroit because one of my hobbies is being an investor. And so in around that time, um, it was a lot of talk going around where people were buying homes in Detroit for $1, you know,
Hmm.
and people were buying homes in Detroit for $100, So I was like, okay, well, let me make my footprint here. It's not far from Chicago, so let me make my footprint here. And I came back here, you know, I was like, let me try something slightly different, and I decided to go to plumbing full time. And when I went to plumbing full time, I started out with Rotor Rooter. And be honest with you, I was not a big fan. Not Rotor Rooter is a great company, but I wasn't a fan of how um you essentially had to fight for jobs, in order for you to make your income. So basically your timing, you had to, really try to do it as quick as you can. And
Mhm.
you know, and then that's pretty much how you made your money. And
Right.
yeah, but one of the things that I loved about Roto-Rooter, which I carried on into my professional multifamily experience, is their professionalism of how they sold a job or how they carried themselves when they went into customers' homes. And so, and I took that and I ran with it. And I was with Roto-Rooter for a little bit. And then I had a friend from my mosque. He was a master plumber, and he took me under his wing. And he really taught me the ins and outs of plumbing. And I still wasn't interested. It wasn't bad. It was good money, but I still wasn't interested. And I went back to multifamily, and I went back to multifamily as a maintenance supervisor, and yeah, just went from there.
So interesting that you mentioned. I remember the homes for $1, at a homes for $100
Yeah.
program in Detroit.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
did you invest in any real estate?
I did invest in real estate, not for a dollar, but and not
Oh
for a
no.
hundred dollars.
Well, I would have been really jealous, and so would a lot of the
Yeah.
listeners if you did get in on the ground floor there. But so you invested in real estate, and what were you able let's start with what were you able to bring from your history to being a real estate owner? Because I know a lot of people in our industry that are, also, investors or rehabbers or flipper, whatever you want to call them. There's so many different lanes you could be in real estate and
Yeah.
single family homes. So, what did you learn about the process?
Um, so
It's
investing
not as
in so
easy as it
I
looks on TV.
no, no,
It's
no,
it's
it's
not as
not.
easy as
It's
it looks on
not.
TV.
It's not. So it actually helped me learn exactly where my niche was at, you know.
Okay.
Um, I started out with single family homes, investing in the single family homes. I bought a property, you know, I started out rehabbing maybe like a quarter way, and then I will flip it. Uh, Rewind. I started out
Hmm.
wholesaling first.
Okay.
Then I actually started actually purchasing the homes myself. And then, I started out, maybe like a quarter remodel, and then flip it. And then a half remodel, then flip it, then, full remodel and then flip it, you know.
Okay.
And I, set aside, I would do that on the side, like outside of my maintenance job, you know, whether I was a maintenance supervisor or whether I was a maintenance tech, as soon as 5 o'clock hit or 5:30, if I was on an emergency call, um, 5:30 would hit, I would leave and then I would go straight to my rental property, or the property that I was rehabbing. Or, I did a lot of jobs for investors that had single family homes. And honestly, if you want me to be 100% real with you, I piped 2 houses in the dark before,
Wow.
literally using, like, construction lights, flashlights, and, my first house that I did like that, it took me about 4 days to repipe the house, you know?
Wow.
Um yeah, yeah, but, I mean, that's pretty much my experience when it comes to, investing and, rehabs and, and, um, as you may hear some people say, "Oh, the long money." I was like, "Hmm." I wanna try to get to the long money, which is, multifamily, So one of my goals
Yeah.
now is to invest more into multifamily real estate, you know, getting to over 10 units and 20 units and, 50 units and, and so on, and just kind of grow from there because you don't really find too many owner operators that their background is maintenance, you know. A lot of owner operators, their backgrounds is either business or being a property manager or accounting or something of the sort. Is I'm not saying they're not out there, but from my experience, I have not met too many owner operator. In fact, not I don't think I've ever met an owner operator whose background was maintenance, So
Yeah.
with my background being maintenance and, I kind of know the ins and outs of things, just I'm gonna give it a shot.
No, I think it's great that you have that goal and you have that drive. I do know um people in that came up through multifamily or that came up through maintenance
Yeah.
that are owner operators, and it surprises me every time I meet
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
because you're right. There is I've full disclosure, I've never invested in anything outside of my own house. I
Mhm.
would love to. I have, skills in flipping and rehabbing units, and houses and apartments. So, but yeah, no,
Yeah.
they're out there, Khalil.
Yeah.
But you're right. They are few and far between.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? And the passion that I have for maintenance, I feel like as an owner operator, I would not say anything against anybody who doesn't have a maintenance background, but like I really take passion like in maintenance, like I've always had it to where if I don't feel like if I can't move in there physically, or if my family can't move in there physically, if I can't go and, you know, sh- lay out like this in the middle of the floor, it's not right. It's not right,
Yeah.
And so with that being said, it's like, um, my heart definitely gears towards affordable housing as well. And, I feel like I can make a big difference, when it comes to, being a maintenance professional, um, advocating for affordable housing. I feel like those bind together.
Yeah, that's amazing, and yeah, I work in the affordable housing space, so yeah, I literally just celebrated 10 years with
Yeah.
wind companies.
Yeah.
So I've been doing
Congratulations.
affordable housing. Thank you. So literally just celebrated it yesterday, and pretty excited about. I didn't know what affordable housing was. Um,
Hmm.
I came up through my first 6 or 7 years in multifamily was luxury,
Hmm.
and I feel a real honor and privilege to providing safe and affordable housing for so many people. And that's I think that's my passion now. Is it's
Yeah.
not about just making sure that the building is, pretty and working, but
Hmm.
my passion is more safe and affordable than it
Yeah.
was when I first got into the business.
Yeah.
Yes, I want it to be beautiful. I want it to be pristine. I want all that as well. But to be able to provide um, that kind of housing to the people who are in need of it most really
Hmm.
means something to me personally. So I share your feeling and I share your sentiment.
Yeah, and one of the things I love about the NAA is their initiatives around affordable housing and really this is my second year going to Advocate,
Okay.
and really just the push of affordable housing and to make the changes to better the affordable housing in our country as it's a crisis right now. So
Yeah. No.
um
Definitely is.
yeah, and in coming from how I grew up and my background, um, you know, parents on Section 8, and food stamps and et cetera. It's like it's my due diligence to give back to our community and provide that.
That's amazing. So when you talk about giving back, we talked a little bit about the affordable housing, but you sound like a very busy guy.
Mhm.
Um, do you still box, or
No, so
did you leave that in your teenage years?
no, so I left that some years ago. Boxing and martial arts. I am a first degree black belt in Shorin karate,
Okay.
and so I still train. I still stay um, healthy and active. But in terms of like competitions and stuff, no, I left that years ago. I got a lot of stuff going on nowadays. So
Well, that's where I was going, right? So, you don't have it sounds like you don't have a lot of free time between your full-time job as a project manager and your personal investments. And I'm
mhm,
sure that the minute we get off today, I'm sure you're probably doing something along those lines. It wouldn't surprise me.
100%.
Um, but you also found time to volunteer with your local apartment association, and you had mentioned Advocate, and going to down to NAA's Advocate conference in Washington D.C. Where did that come from? Why did you? Who got you into it, or did you just do something on do it on your own and get involved?
So I have to give many, many, many thanks to first and foremost my former property manager and regional manager. Her name is Rochelle Cole. You know, um, she got me into the affiliates, the DMAA
Hmm.
and PMAM. At first, I'm like, I'm really too busy for all of that.
Yeah.
Just a quick sidebar into going into your question, initially I told her no because I had a lot going on at the time. It was at the heat of COVID, and I was a maintenance supervisor, over multiple properties. And then I took on a second job with the city of Detroit as a facilities operations manager over quarantine shelters for
Oh, wow.
homeless individuals that the mayor had a special program for. So when she was asking, I'm like, I got a lot going on right now. Maybe once this program is done, I'll look into it. And so when the program was done, she was like, all right, you got time now. You want to come to one of the events, one of the meetings? I'm like, all right, sure. And then all right, sure, a couple times, I end up becoming very involved, and I have to give a lot of thanks also to, uh, my fellow, members, Peggy Ellis and, Rayshawn Phillips, Patrina, Smith, everybody that's on our board, for their support, so, um, I then became, so it wasn't 20 on a rise. It was 20s in their 20s. It was the last year of
Right.
20s in their 20s. I was the first maintenance professional to apply and be selected of the 20s in their 20s. And then in that same year, I won Maintenance Supervisor of the Year and the President's Award of the DMAA, you know. And I later then became uh, a board member, the first maintenance professional to become part of the DMAA's board of directors, you know. And so, and then from there, that's how I got to advocate. I'll Rochelle has been on the board for about 5-6 years now, and she would tell me about all the things that they do on the board. And I'm like, man, that sounds cool. Tell me about compartmentalize. I'm like, oh man, all of that sounds cool, and this, that, and the other. And so I experienced compartmentalize first because I was 20s in
Okay.
their 20s, and then the following year, that's when I went to Advocate. And she's like, Advocate is very, is very business-like, so you got to come with your A game. And I went to Advocate. I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoy, talking to a lot of the congressmen and women, the senators, and then again, pushing, these initiatives to, help better our industry in all, help better the society, again, of the crisis that we have, and when it comes to the YIMBY Act, and dealing with the NIMBYs, the affordable housing, and the CARES Act, all of that stuff plays a part as a maintenance professional, believe it or not. And I saw things on a different end as well, even as being a real estate investor, and how YIMBYs and NIMBYs, play a big part, you know, as a maintenance
And for
professional.
those people in the audience, and I would hope that everybody would understand those two
Oh,
acronyms.
yeah,
Yeah, but
yeah,
I'll explain them. A YIMBY is yes in my backyard. That's people who are advocating for
yeah.
primarily affordable housing, but it actually even be luxury or market rate housing um,
Mhm,
to be built in their towns or their neighborhoods. And then you have the
mhm,
NIMBYs, the not in my backyard, which is the other
mhm.
side, which has a tendency to advocate for not building in their town or their in their literally in their backyard.
Yep,
And yes, there is a acts before. There's always something being brought up by state and federal legislators on both sides of the aisle. um, to so it's nice that you're, in addition to being a technician and being a supervisor and being a
yeah,
independent real estate owner,
yeah.
you're giving back and learning at the same time. It sounds you've learned quite a bit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Because, in learning that, I gain a lot of understanding as to like, wow, this is the reason why my permit was blocked, Like even in today's time as a project manager, I've had permits purposely blocked, you know, and they're not saying, well, I shouldn't say blocked, but on hold,
Yeah.
for whatever reason the reason may be, because they really don't want this project to undergo, and you may say, well, hey, we're taking these trees out because these trees are dead, and we don't want it to harm anybody. And they're like, mm, and it's just different things like that, that I've experienced, and you know, just from the NAA and learning about the different, laws and acts and, et cetera, I understand why, they may be going about it this way or that way and, et cetera.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from the various associations, but one of talking about COVID, one of the things that I did um to give back to my local community, and it's a very simple thing um that really anybody can do unless you're in a big major city. Um
Yeah.
is I volunteer and I sit on my township's planning board. So we have to
Nice.
review plans and we have to review cases, and we have to decide if they're within, our purview to approve or they need to go back and be revised. And I learned so much about zoning because I was on the zoning board first, and then I'm on the township's planning board. I mean, it was a 1 hour a month commitment. Maybe it's 2 hour a month, but I learned
Yeah.
so much about, you know, I learned more about zoning laws. I learned about permitting than I had in my 20 years in the
Yeah.
industry because I
Yeah.
saw so many different types of cases, so many
Hmm.
different types of proposals. And this is what developers are doing all the time. Our
Hmm.
development counterparts in multifamily are those investors. That's what they do is they work with their architects and engineers, and then they have to go before a planning board or go before a zoning board. So in
Yeah.
donating that hour or two a month um to give back to my community, I was actually able to find a whole new skill set and
Hmm.
language that I'm able to talk to others in. I will eventually get a developer on Beyond the Work because I haven't had one yet.
Yeah.
Um,
Got to.
but
Got to.
it's a whole different side of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And again, that's just how you learn more, and you'll understand that it's definitely a lot of politics behind it. But I've always growing up, always heard like, hey, if you want to change, you got to be the change, and
Yeah.
everyone, you could. It's one thing to sit back and you can complain, but you can't say you've done it all until you actually get active, boots on the ground, like, okay, all right, nobody else is doing it. What can I do? And yeah, and just go from there.
So as you know, that was a really good segue because we're going to wrap up, and maybe you already gave me your answer, Khalil.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what do you suggest maintenance professionals do to get to that next level?
Education.
How
Education.
does that look? How does that look to you as somebody who started learning with his hands at the age of 12, had big dreams of going into, international business, have
Mhm.
had the schooling from some great trade companies and great, unions, um, your own father?
Mhm.
Uh, what does education look like to you?
I mean, it could be many different things. I would say, as a maintenance tech or maintenance supervisor, gravitate to a trade that resonates with you the most. So whether that be HVAC, if HVAC resonates with you most, get your start with your EPA certification. You know, um, or you can start with all your basic certifications, or I'll call them basic, but they're large, they're meaningful certifications. But start with your EPA certification, your CPO. The NAA offers the CAMT course, which is very beneficial. You have your OSHA 10 and your OSHA 30. I personally have my OSHA 30, and now it's like, as a project manager, I am very on edge about safety. You know what I'm saying? That's
The
what the
more you
ocean.
know, the nervouser you get. I know that feeling, my
Yeah.
friend. I know that
Yeah.
feeling well.
Yeah. But the more education that you get yourself, the better you are able to develop a strategy to innov- innovately. I don't know if that's a word or not, but you can you can come up with better strategy to come up with innovative ideas to make your property better, or to make your company better, or to, if you have a project, a personal project, to make those projects and stuff better, um because it's limitless. It's all based on a strategy, and you can't do that without education.
Yeah, and for me, I'm going to answer my own question, which I already started doing, is that
Yeah.
I've learned more from volunteering
Hmm.
and giving of myself, which has helped me learn more and become added more tools to my tool bag. And I'd like to think has helped one, not only made me a better person, but a better professional. And that
Yeah.
is at a local level. That is, in my own town. It has nothing to do with my job. Nobody knows I do that. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I do
Yeah.
stuff with the National Apartment Association, and various ways, but I learned so many different things, and you learn so many people, you get to meet so many people. And I feel like the more people you get to meet, the more you get to learn and
Yeah.
get out of your comfort zone and out of your sphere. And it sounds like you've done just that, Khalil.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, being a professional really takes you a long way. And again, I have to stress education is the biggest thing. Education and, getting those certifications, getting those licensings is very important because, even with your resident rapport, like it will help in that instance. It would limit the stress. Some of the stresses of just, I was talking to one of our technicians yesterday, and I'm like, hey, you want to try to gravitate from saying this stuff or this thing to actually being able to describe, what it is, um, just like with, I would say I'm a father, and just like with my children, I say, hey, you got to be able to try to describe with your words instead of, trying to describe with your hands. So education definitely comes a long way in that regard.
Nah, it's wonderful. So, Khalil, any closing thoughts as we close out this week's episode of Beyond the Work?
Listen, I have to say again, I appreciate you for having me on the show. I'm very honored to sit in front of one of our maintenance legends.
Thank you.
I have to again, shout out to the DMAA, PMAM, all of my fellow board members. And again, I wouldn't be here without the support of my peers. And I appreciate it. It helps me keep going. It helps my morale to keep pushing forward to you know help our local, state, and national maintenance professionals. Keep going.
Well, Khalil Muhammad, project manager at Elevate Commercial. Thank you so much for joining me in the
Thank you.
audience today on Beyond the Work Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. Thank you all for tuning in and listening to another episode and come back next week where we can hear some more great stories and we go beyond the work.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for joining me today for Beyond the Work Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. No matter how long you've been in our industry or what position you have at your company or your community, everyone has a maintenance tale to tell. If you like this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and follow to this podcast. Go to www.multifamilymedianetwork.com and leave me a voice message or share your information, and we can tell your tale together on a future episode. Please join the MMN newsletter for upcoming industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. Our stories all connect us. See you for the next chapter.